You're watching WPR-TV, Channel 60, municipal television for the city of Pleasant Ridge.
Hello and welcome to Inside Pleasant Ridge, the show that lets you know what's going on inside the finest little community in all of Michigan. Tonight, we're going to start with the State of the City, 1996. Then we're looking at rethinking Woodward Avenue, maintaining our history, and we're going to finish off with Yesteryear, Pleasant Ridge. We've got a great show for you. Stay tuned. And as promised, the State of the City. Here in his third year as mayor is Ralph A. Castelli, Jr. Welcome, Ralph.
Good evening, David. Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure having our mayor.
I'm running around from site to site tonight, from here, then to karate lessons, and then to a public hearing of the Planning Commission.
I assume there's a correlation, but no, probably not. But, okay, let's talk about the state of the city. What, in general, would you say is the state of the city right now?
Right now, the city is in fine shape. We've come off one of our finest fiscal years. And when I talk about the years, I'll talk in fiscal year basis. June 30th, 1995 is our 95 year. June 30th, 96 is our 96 year. In fiscal 1995, as most people know, we did settle the 696 freeway suit and put a lot of money in the bank. The citizens then approved a millage to help finance the rebuilding of Pleasant Ridge, and that work commenced in '95. And the first projects were Amherst and Cambridge, the Woodward Avenue side of Cambridge. And those projects came in $52,000 under budget.
Whoa.
This year we're already starting to work on Maplefield, which will be a replacement of that street, and also dealing with some sewer work. The last positive note from an economic basis for '95 is that it looks like our general fund balance increased by $55,000 for the year, as opposed to a projected deficit. So the city administration did a fine job fiscally that year.
The old belt tightening, huh?
The old belt tightening and checking every disbursement and you know, just putting the lids on the budget.
Now, the Mirror just got it today, reports that, and I don't know if you've seen this, but reports that Pleasant Ridge has the highest rise in home values in all of Oakland County. They're up 14%. Does that mean the taxpayers are going to get hit with a 14% tax increase?
Well, the taxpayers are going to thank Proposal A, which will hold it down to 2.8%. Now, for those people who sold their homes, the new owners will see their homes go to you know, a value based upon a sales price. But for people who have lived here throughout the year and will continue to live here, the cap will be at the inflation rate.
So the increased valuation of the home will continue to be there, but the homeowner won't pay it until...
Won't pay tax based on it.
Won't pay the taxes based on that. They'll pay just the consumer price index increase from year to year.
That's right. Until
the home is sold and the new owner comes in at the actual value at the home and starts paying on that.
That's right. We now have a difference between taxable value and the historic SEV.
So there's all the more reason to keep your home in Pleasant Ridge, keep those taxes down for yourself.
That's right.
Or to sell it and bring in new income for the city if you want to do a public service.
Well, there are people, unfortunately, who have to move for job-related and other reasons, and well, 15 years ago, people were wringing their hands as far as whether the freeway would be the death knell of Pleasant Ridge. The way the market's going right now, it's a great place to live and invest.
A hot item. Well, let's talk about some of the major issues that are coming up this year. What lies ahead of us?
Well, as I said, there's a public hearing tonight, which by the time this is aired will be 2 weeks in the past. But the Planning Commission tonight is reviewing the proposed final draft of the new zoning ordinance, and we'll be inviting comments from the public. They will then be issuing us a report as required by state statute. And I talked to Joe today, and he is targeting our April time frame for public hearing at the City Commission level and then a vote on that ordinance. Tomorrow night, we have a series of study sessions at the City Commission level, one being to meet with the pool board and to start going over a budget for next pool season, another meeting with the Historical Commission, and lastly, reviewing the results of the survey which were done with respect to the pedestrian overpass, and to start to come up with a game plan as far as finalizing that issue of the Woodward Avenue crossing.
Let's talk about the zoning ordinance for a minute. What kind of changes can we expect to see most likely in that?
As far as the basic map is concerned, there are some minor changes, but there really aren't any great changes. We're a fully developed community, and what was residential is staying residential.
So we haven't rezoned the whole city?
We haven't rezoned the whole city. Within a couple areas of the what I'll call the commercial district, there may be some minor changes in classifications. There also are some new definitional limits that are being brought in. I think one of the more significant changes, which has had varying degrees of interest from the general citizenry, has been dealing with the recreational vehicles and whether to totally ban them or whether to define a size limit and work with it that way. And in the present draft, recreational vehicles are dealt with respect to a specific size, and over that size, we ask that they not be in town, and if you have a motorhome, store it elsewhere. And under the size, there is not a limitation per se.
I understand that the height change, there's a height restriction change also coming in the possible zoning ordinance?
I can't recall offhand what there is, but part of what we were looking at is some of the limitations vis-a-vis the accessory buildings in light.
Mostly garages.
Mostly garages, and I joke that we're not the Zoning Board of Appeals, we're the Garage Board of Appeals. Right. And there's an attempt being made to address a number of the issues that we saw in those various ZBA meetings to try to allow people to rebuild garages that need to be rebuilt without making it any more onerous or expensive if we don't have to. And yet at the same time address the situation of new construction and make sure that those garages are within modern thoughts as far as setbacks and the like. The biggest problem we've had with the garages with a fully developed city has been that they have been built right on the lot lines historically. And to replace that garage and to move it over within current thinking as far as setbacks is concerned would mean going to the extra expense of putting a new pad down or relocating the pad and the like. The ZBA has sought to deal with those situations to bring about an overall just result. And there have been some people who have been turned down and who have come back and been granted variances. Overall, the neighbors have been very supportive of the idea of letting people rebuild their garage where it's been for 30 or 40 years. And what we've really seen is that there were a fair number of people reinvesting in Pleasant Ridge over the last several years, tearing down buildings that were dilapidating and putting up new buildings, and quite frankly, that's what we'd like to see.
Something we'd like to encourage.
That's right.
Absolutely. I understand that one of the projects that's coming up fairly soon, maybe this summer will start, is the renovation of our recreation center at Fort Ridge.
The recreation center at Fort Ridge project is presently going forward. The Recreation Commission and the Planning Commission are each reviewing the plans for that, and the city administration is working on a proposal for a financing package to present to the City Commission to fund that. It's something that has widespread, obvious, enthusiastic support by the rec director and the rec commission, and has the full support of the city administration and the city commission. And as we said last summer, we hope to break ground in this next summer coming up.
Now, the state turned down our request for a grant to offset the cost on that, so the city will be picking up the full tab, is that correct?
That's right, and that is why we explained to the rec commission we wanted to wait 1 year. We wanted to take a shot at getting that grant, and the indications were that we might very well have received the grant, but the state wanted to put some strings on vis-a-vis opening up the pool, but would not tell us how far and how pervasive those strings would have to be. So in the end analysis, the grant wasn't procured, and we'll simply go forward and pay our own way. And lastly, as far as a major issue of this year, we are still dealing with the DPW privatization issue. The current status of that is that we have sent out bids. We had identified 2 qualified bidders. We received a bid package back from one of those bidders. The second bidder declined to bid. We have had a meeting at the city commission level with the administration, followed by a meeting with the sole bidder to seek clarification as far as some of the issues. Joe Marucci has had follow-up meetings with the bidder to again seek to clarify issues and work towards a contractual proposal that Joe could present to the commission. At the same time, Joe has been involved in talking to the union representatives about what's going on, what is being proposed within the bid package for our workers, and what process we're going through as this winds down.
Now, is this primarily a matter of economics?
It is driven by economics. We hope to save a significant amount of money by going private and achieving the economies of scale of having the services provided by a company much, much larger than we are.
Pedestrian overpass, what's the status?
As I said, we're having a study session tomorrow night to decide on the steps here on out. We have talked about
no decision. I just want to clarify, no decision's been made on it.
No decision has been made, and no decision is being made at the study session. Primarily, we have promised to have a public hearing once we got the results of the survey and any further input from the city administration or other information that we feel is pertinent, and it's a matter of sitting down and trying to come up with a timeline to proceed with it.
Okay, we've got about 1 minute to talk about just a couple of other issues. One is the library committee. I understand there's a study committee that's looking at library.
Library committee has solicited bids. They're due March 1st, which is this Friday. And a month from them, April 1st, we have our municipal elections, and you've decided to retire and go on to saner pastures. So we have one incumbent running and one seat with no incumbent running. 4 candidates have filed: Ray John, the incumbent, Michael Kay, Joan Shorman, and Len Wessels. Len has lived his entire life in Pleasant Ridge. Michael, from a newspaper article I read, appears to have lived 47 out of 48 of his life in Pleasant Ridge. Monday, March 25th, at Fort Ridge, the League of Women Voters will be in town to conduct a Meet the Candidates night. I do not know the time. I imagine it'll be 7:30 or 8, but when I talked to Judy Bateman yesterday about the date, I neglected to ask her what time it would start.
Well, we'll make sure that Channel 60 runs that time, and we thank you for joining us, letting us know what's going on in our city and what to expect coming up. We'll be back with more right after this message.
Tommy wants to design bridges when he grows up. Maybe he'll design one that you'll use. Now, would you like this free booklet of simple ways you can help improve his education? Call 1-800-96-PROMISE.
Hi there, I have a riddle for you. What has 900 businesses, 91 restaurants, 12 furniture stores, 34 medical offices, 16 consumer electronics stores, 11 new car dealerships, 34 automotive shops, 23 beauty shops, 12 dry cleaners, 12 banks, and 60,000 cars a day? To answer that question, we have Deborah Shutt, project manager for
the Woodward Avenue Corridor Study.
And Woodward Avenue is the answer.
That's it, bingo.
That's it. Woodward Avenue is sort of the main artery, the heart, going right through the heart of South Oakland County.
I think it's the heart of all of southeast Michigan.
It's certainly the dividing line between east and west. It's the center of attention. Everybody's an east sider or west sider depending on where they are on Woodward.
That's it.
And let's talk about this. You work actually for the county, is that correct?
Yes.
And your position with the county is?
I am the supervisor of planning in the Development and Planning Office.
Okay. And you are the project manager for the Woodward Avenue Corridor Study Committee, or the study?
The study itself, yes.
The study, okay. And how did this study start? Who started this study?
It was actually back in '93, and the county was approached by actually the Chamber in Royal Oak. And the Chamber said, you know,
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. And they said, we've been working on our downtown, and that's come along just fine, but now we need to reach out and we need to look at Woodward Avenue and the businesses on Woodward. We had some initial discussions, but the result of those discussions were that it didn't make a whole lot of sense to take a small segment of Woodward and make it look right or make it function right, because if it's not functioning right, either even across the street or to the north or to the south, you've not fixed the problem. So the other communities, actually 6 communities, were then approached.
And let's talk about what are the 6 communities. It starts at 8 Mile in Ferndale.
Yes.
And goes all the way to?
Quarton, which is the northern boundary for Birmingham.
Let's see how my geography is. So that would be Ferndale, Pleasant Ridge, Huntington Woods, Royal Oak, Berkeley, and Birmingham.
You got it.
Did I get it?
Yep, you got it.
In order, in ascending order.
Yes.
North to south, not necessarily quality or importance. Pleasant Ridge, we always claim, is the
number one,
the garden spot of Oakland County and perhaps the world. But our own modesty not being too important here, let's get back to the issue. The other communities bought into this. They saw that there was a real need for coordinating and dealing with this as one long corridor, as opposed to, this is my little section, that's yours, you worry about it.
Exactly.
What brought this about? Cities don't often cooperate that way, do they?
Actually, we're starting to see a little more of it than I think we have in the past. I think there's the recognition that working with your neighbors allows you to leverage resources. And it may be $1,000 here and $1,000 there. It doesn't buy very much, but when you put 2,000 together and you get somebody's attention, sometimes they'll add to it. And that's exactly what happened with this project.
And why did it cut off with Birmingham? Why not on into Bloomfield and up to Pontiac?
One is that we're working with just less than 10 miles here, and that's a substantial amount of territory to cover.
Enough to cover, I suspect.
Enough to cover. But the corridor substantially changes once you hit north of Quarton. And
visually changes.
It visually changes, and the problems, the opportunities, they're different. And we did make the offer to Bloomfield Hills, Bloomfield Township, and Pontiac that if they were interested in a second phase, once the first phase was done, we would work with those communities.
Now, has this project been a very expensive proposition?
How does one answer that?
Well, how much does it cost?
Actually, an absolute bargain for, I think, the 6 cities involved.
Your salary is paid by the county.
My salary.
You're on salary, so this is what you've been sort of diverted to doing as one of your jobs, but not the only thing you do.
Right. And there are others at the county that are also in the same position.
So it was
that
a
are-
matter, in your case, of priorities being put on this as opposed to you being hired to do it.
Exactly. Our operating budget, which is printing of materials, buying supplies, those kinds of items, is right around $77,000. And that's the cheap side of the study. I have no doubt that when we finish, if we take the staff salaries, overheads, benefits, the in-kind contributions, which have been tremendous out of student work. In the beginning of the project, we had 100 architectural students actually assigned to work and gather information. If we had to pay for all of those items, open up your pocket, reach in, we're probably approaching $1 million, $1.5 million will be the value of the study when it's complete.
But as you said, I think Lawrence Technological University, did I get the new name? It's still Lawrence Tech to me. The students from there, it became a whole project for them as a part of their class work, is that correct?
Yes.
A great number of students. And that must have been, that kind of manpower must have been very helpful indeed.
Invaluable. And we're continuing because each new semester we have new students that actually are working in our studio, which is located on 11 Mile, and they put anywhere from, average probably about 20 hours a week per student.
I'd like to just let the folks know about some of the things that have come out of this. One is a huge market analysis, just an enormous amount of data about what's going on in the area. You literally counted every store. You know how many stores are at street level, how many are above, how many businesses, what the businesses are. You know just about everything there is about the sales facilities on the Woodward Corridor, and empty buildings and all those kinds of things.
Those people who shop there, how much money they're spending, how much money they have potentially to spend.
Right. And let's see what else we have. You have a findings report, a beautiful color glossy thing like this that shows all kinds of, really a summary of the highlights of your study so far. All kinds of interesting tidbits in here and hints as to where we might be going. Let's see what else we have. You have, of course, individual findings for goals and objectives, the median strips, blocks, buildings, and parking, mile segment profiles, and signage, transportation, and so forth. Even history. How did history get involved with this? What difference does history make?
We found that if you're truly interested in studying, whether it be a downtown or a corridor strip or a community in itself, one of the most important elements is to look at the history. Unless you know where you've been, you often don't know where you're going. And so one of our first efforts was to look at the corridor and to look at the history involved. And in addition to that, right now we have a contract with a private consulting firm, Giffords Associates, and they are actually identifying for us up and down the corridor the historic and architecturally significant buildings and also the sites, because we certainly want to retain the history that we have and appreciate it. And
will we see some historical markers coming along
I
on
think
this site in 1841 or whatever?
I think we will see some historical
That would be
markers
nifty.
that will result.
I noticed this. These are available up at City Hall, by the way, for free. A nifty little pocket guide, pocket full of memories, a Woodward Avenue timeline. And if you've got any kids, or if you're just into history, but if you want to teach history, it starts back prehistoric times and takes this area and Woodward Avenue specifically and takes it on a timeline all the way up through the present, from the founding and the paving and the beginnings of almost anything and everything right up through the Woodward Dream Cruise in 1995. A great little thing just to browse through. If you're into history, that one's super. And that one, like I said, is a freebie for anybody who wants to drop by City Hall and pick it up. A little side benefit.
It certainly is. The background work, that timeline was prepared as part of the background report. And when it got close to the Dream Cruise, our steering committee that we work with was looking at ways of how can we promote what we're doing. I said, you know, this is a great timeline. How can we make it handy? And so we did a little reformatting, and I think it's a great piece.
Yeah, I read it last night, and I was just, you know, enthralled with it. Because it not only runs the timeline here, but it runs a national timeline. What's going on nationally? What are the major issues and wars and this and who's elected president and what's going on in the county? You can see when the Civil War is going on, what's going on right here at the same time frame. So that puts things in a much better perspective. Let's talk about some of the things you looked at. One of them is obviously the 60,000 cars a day. This is an automobile haven here. There wasn't for naught that we had the Dream Cruise.
That's right.
But that presents some problems for the area. There are really two kinds of traffic, aren't there?
There really is two kinds of traffic, and it really gives us a challenge because the Michigan Department of Transportation will tell you that Woodward is what they call a principal arterial. They have one function. You go from point A to point B. It gets you through. Except what has happened, and that may have been the case when many, many moons back. When
you're connecting Detroit and Pontiac.
Exactly.
And that's what you were doing, was going.
But as you said, we have 900 businesses on Woodward. That means there are 900 destination points. So it's no longer a through. There are a whole lot of stops to be made.
Well, you get that kind of running up against people who want to go through as quickly as they can because they're going from that long distance away to this long distance away. And you've got those people who are making short little runs to stop here and get something, pick something up there, drop it off at the dry cleaners, get a burger here, go get a TV set over there, and so forth. That traffic's not very compatible, is it?
Not at all. And of course we have a very large traffic generator with Beaumont Hospital also. Very large.
Right.
There are people getting to
work.
So
what can we do about that?
There are a couple of things that we're considering at this point in time. First of all, we've got to look at are the speeds appropriate? And we might be making, I'm sure we're going to be making some recommendations to adjust some speeds. The other is, how do you get people in a safe area for those that all want to turn off? And we're looking at the possibility of a local lane where traffic and speeds are reduced. Stay in the left lane or the center lane.
Like expressways with through traffic lanes and the local traffic lanes, and kind of separate those out?
Exactly.
That makes some sense.
Then there are things that we can address that don't deal with the automobile itself, but helps the driver. And those are things like signage, addresses, which are horribly confusing.
There are plenty of signs on Woodward Avenue. You don't have to look around. What's wrong with that?
They're all competing for your attention, and none of them are getting it. And that's because...
If everybody shouts, nobody can hear what you're saying.
Exactly. So what we need to have is some order to it. So you know if you're looking for a particular address, you know exactly where to look to find that address.
Speaking of addresses, you have a very colorful little map here. It kind of shows something that I guess I had looked for some addresses and just found it kind of confusing to find a place and thought I was a little stupid, which my wife will probably confirm at the first opportunity. But we find that if we're down in Ferndale or in Pleasant Ridge, we have odd numbers on the west side and even numbers on the east side, and you go right on up. I think that continues from Detroit, doesn't it? The numbering
all the way
system?
Down to the river.
All the way down to the river. And then you get to Royal Oak, and something happens. What goes on?
Well, Royal Oak, Berkeley, and Birmingham have their own addressing systems.
So they throw out that consistent pattern all the way from the river and start their own thing.
Their own thing.
Okay, and not only that, but they reverse the side that the even and odd numbers are on.
Yes, switches back and forth.
Through part of Royal Oak, and then it switches to the way it is in Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale in another part of Royal Oak.
Yes.
And then on up the map, it switches again when we get to Birmingham. The odd side becomes the even side. It's a little chaotic, isn't it?
I think it's a lot chaotic.
Doesn't that give them trouble even delivering mail? Don't you have missed deliveries and things?
We do.
Yeah.
We had met with the post office in Birmingham, and they said that both because of the changing, and they also have duplicates. addresses.
Same number in two different places on Woodward?
Yes. So you'll have a 500 North Woodward and a 500 South Woodward. And there are people like myself that when you address an envelope, you don't realize that putting an N or an S is that important, so sometimes you don't. Well, what happens is that the post office cannot use their automatic sorting system, and they have to sort by hand, to the tune of 60,000 pieces of mail per year that is being sorted by hand.
This is something that needs to be looked at, definitely.
I think so.
Okay. We're running short on time, and we've got lots to talk about. I want to move on to the idea of underutilization and vacancies. We mentioned that not every business is inhabited. I think right now every business in Pleasant Ridge is either inhabited or is being moved into and being renovated and will be open for business fairly soon. But there are empty spots up and down the corridor. Does that mean it's not a desirable place to be?
Not at all. The corridor is an incredibly desirable place to be. But we do have, I learned this term at the last job I did, and I just find it fascinating, technologically obsolete buildings or parking areas. Many of the areas were developed before we had the demands for the automobile that we have now. So there's just not the parking available, and parking is very important to a business owner. They have to be able to provide it for their patrons. The other thing are that some of the stores were built at a time when square footages were smaller. The space needs weren't as great as they are now, and they are having difficulties renting. So people want to be on the corridor.
Well, how do we make more parking, though? I mean, you can't narrow the street down, and in fact, they widened it and took parking away when they came through with the expressway here. What do you do?
Actually, we have a couple of different scenarios, and it depends where you're at on the corridor, how you address that. In some instances, the only way to do it is to purchase a building, remove it, and provide parking.
Demolition, then.
Demolition. In other areas, we've been surprised that if you actually organize the parking, if someone look at the entire site as a whole, maybe move the alley one way or another, you can pick up an incredible amount of parking by reorganizing. And the third thing is to look at often blocks as an entire block area, and the whole idea of shared parking. If you're a business that operates during the day and I'm a business that would traditionally operate at night, we don't each have to have all those spaces for all our clients, but we do need to have an agreement where we can share our parking areas.
Okay, we're running short on time. Where's this going? Is the study finished now, or is there more to be done?
There's more to be done. We will be coming out with the plan and the recommendations in June, and that will actually put a cap on the study itself.
And I understand you're forming a private corporation, a non-profit corporation?
Non-profit corporation, and their job will be taking those recommendations in that plan and making it a reality.
And getting hopefully some donations and grants and the like to help offset the costs.
Absolutely.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. It's been fascinating. We certainly are going to have you come back when the recommendations come out. We're going to be looking at what you're proposing and how it's going to work out. And you got plenty of work left to do?
Oh, we do, and I can't wait to be back with the graphics, and you can see things that really excite you.
Okay, we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to seeing you right after this message.
Good afternoon, officer. My license and registration. Cheeseburger? It's hot out today, huh, officer? Maybe my tail light's out.
Shouldn't you be carpooling?
I guess you're right.
I guess I am.
Carpooling can save up to 600,000 gallons of gas a year. This message sponsored by Ad Council and EarthShare.
Welcome back. This is a historical occasion. Actually, it is, strictly speaking, a historical occasion because we have the new chairperson of the Historical Commission And the secretary, we have Doug Mcelroy and Mary Dean Campsie. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
There are 7 new members on the Historical Commission. It's being revitalized, lots of new blood coming in. You have now established, I think for the first time, regular meetings. When are your meetings?
Our meetings are the first Wednesday of each month in the City Commission chambers at the City Hall.
And I believe you've established a set of goals and objectives, and things are rolling along. Let's talk about, how do you feel about the Historical Commission right now? Do you feel that there is a new energy, a new direction?
Yeah, I think we're really excited to be a part of Pleasant Ridge, and most of the new members really haven't been involved with the city government before, so this is kind of a new experience for us. But I think everyone is happy to be there. They've, in many cases, looked for a niche to serve in, and I think there's a lot of energy, and we'll be able to get a lot done.
And of course, there you've got the long-term members with an incredible base of knowledge and expertise in the community and background. So it's a nice mix there.
Yeah, the group is working together very nicely.
We said you had established some goals and objectives. What exactly are your goals for this year?
Well, we've actually set up 5 standing committees. The first one, or at least one of them, is the commission, or the group to study the police booth, the structure that sits behind the City Hall. And that has been sitting there for a bit of time, and there's been a lot of discussion on what the best use for that structure is. We're trying to get involved in both what the historical status of that building should be and how it might be used. As you probably know, it's a very small building, so we've been looking at if it's turned into a public building, whether you'd need to put in handicap access and bathrooms and all that kind of stuff, which obviously in a small building would
just about use it up.
Yeah, we'd be able to have a public coat closet with a bathroom.
Or a public phone booth with, with a bathroom.
Possibly that. We haven't run phone wires to it yet, but that's...
So this is under study. It's just a matter of looking at it and seeing what can be done, what should be done, what's the best way to do it.
Right.
There are a lot of ideas that people have, and it's...
What are some of the ideas?
Well, some people have talked about having it attached to City Hall to use as an office or a storage area. There's been talk of just moving it to another location, leaving it where it is, developing it as a storage for the archives of the commission.
Kind of a small museum kind of...
Yes,
set?
Or perhaps even having it as a place for people to get warm in wintertime when there are things going on outside.
It was used that way for a long time around the skating rink up on 10 Mile.
I know it was. There's also... been a proposal that it be used for children's storytelling, which I think would be a nice family addition to the neighborhood.
Of course, it could be a mixture of several of those
Well,
things.
that's the beauty of it. It is a small structure, but the goal of the group that's looking into it, at least from our perspective, is to try to maximize the number of uses that it can be put to. It doesn't have to be just a single service facility.
Which at this point I believe is a home for raccoons. Retired and vagrant raccoons are congregating there periodically. Okay, the police booth is one. What are some of your other objectives?
Well, we're also looking at, there's some proposed zoning changes in Pleasant Ridge. One of the things that we're looking at is how those might affect the historic character of the neighborhood. Things like modern zoning would, let's say, require garages to be built 5 feet or 10 feet off the property line. A lot of the homes were built and the existing garages were separate from the homes. They're right on the property line. We would just want to make sure things like if a tree blows into a garage that it can be rebuilt.
You mean on site?
On site, yeah. I mean, we want to certainly guard the existing structures so that they can be replaced and not have to be obviously changed.
And before you came in, the mayor was here earlier, and he was talking about almost exactly the same thing, and was going to a meeting tonight, I guess, a public hearing on that.
Yeah, as soon as the cameras roll, then so do I.
All right, so we're on a 2 for 2 then.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So it will be a true public hearing with lots of public there.
Yes, I think so. We've also got some other projects going. Obviously, the Homes Tour was not held last year for the first year of many, due in large part to just that we didn't get enough enough people who donated their houses or made available their houses for the tour. I guess I'd like to invite the viewing audience to think about how proud they are of their house and whether they'd like to share it with their neighbors.
So you don't have to wait to get an invitation, is that right?
Oh no, I would rather people don't.
They can just contact the City Hall and leave a letter there addressed to the Historical Commission, and we'll be happy to stop by and pick up mail and take care of all these addresses.
They can phone and message too and leave it, and they'll put it in your mailbox, right?
Sure, sure.
So
we can also use helpers, docents, to help tell people about the homes where they are working that are on display.
Right. The home tours I've been on, they have somebody in almost every room to explain this or that, the history of this, where this came from, and that takes, when you have maybe 5 or 6 homes and maybe 5 or 6 rooms in each home, times
the people add up
turnover,
very
it doesn't take long to get a lot, and you don't have them running all day, maybe 2 or 3 shifts, so that I heard numbers like 60 to 80 people it takes to do the home tours.
That's roughly correct. The Garden Club has been very helpful in years past, helping provide docents, but there's never enough people to really staff the houses like you'd like.
So volunteers are welcome.
Absolutely, and again, contact City Hall, let them know you're interested, they'll pass word to us, and we'll make sure that
Now, what about this? Let's say I've got a neighbor, and I think the neighbor's home would be just great on the home tour. Could I go talk to the neighbor and say, hey, I'd like to volunteer your home? If you're interested, I think it would be great. You don't have to wait for the Historical Commission to call you and give you a formal invitation.
Oh, no. I mean, there's 1,500 homes, or roughly, in Pleasant Ridge. We obviously can't get around to everyone. We talk to our neighbors and other people that we know in the area, but if anyone is even remotely interested and would like to talk to us to see whether it would be a good year to volunteer their home, I think they should definitely give us a call.
Okay. They could also, if they know of a home that they think would be a good home for the tour, but they don't want to contact the people directly, they can contact us, and we'll be happy to
one they'd like to
contact
see on the
people.
tour.
Yes.
I'd really like to see this home. A great idea, great idea. You have other goals? Other groups?
Yeah, we've got a couple things tied in with the police booth. We're also trying to go through and take a fresh look at the archives and get those cataloged and understand really what we have. And we've also got a group studying the status of the historic district. Obviously, a couple years ago, Pleasant Ridge, or portions of it, were declared a historic district, but nothing really has come about since then. So we've got a group talking to John Mcelroy, who was involved as a consultant with setting up that historic district, and we're just trying to find out what that really means to the community and whether we should carry that further.
And there's one committee I know of that is working, and that's the one that's developing a video history of the city, trying to preserve interviews with some of our senior citizens, people who've lived here for many years. And Mary Dean is the co-chair on that, the co-interviewer. And we've already taped, 3 interviews
That's right.
with people. And they're fascinating, aren't they?
They certainly are. They have a wealth of information. It's interesting to learn.
Yeah. And in fact, those are going to become, at least shortened versions, those will become a part of this show. We're going to have a regular segment. We started last month with a segment called Yesteryear Pleasant Ridge, and Mary Dean and I will be co-hosting that, and we're going to have a segment coming up very shortly. And in fact, I think it's just about time for that segment right now. Why don't we go take a look at Yesteryear Pleasant Ridge?
And now we invite you to take a trip backward in time as we reminisce with longtime residents and revisit Yesteryear Pleasant Ridge.
Hi. My co-host, Mary Dean Campsie, and I are looking forward to traveling down memory lane with our next guest. She's got her own book, pictures and poetry about her memories of the past, and I think you're going to enjoy them just as much as we have. Her name is Dorothea Watson Eady, but we're just going to call you Dorothea.
Fine.
All right. And Dorothea, you came to us, actually I met you at the Historical Commission meeting, and you had brought in something you'd written, and you wanted to share it with folks and say, hey, if you're interested in this, I'd be glad to contribute it.
Great.
And I had a chance to sit down and read the whole thing all the way through, and it's delightful. You've taken pictures and memories and your own feelings and blended them all together in your own private little book here. Yes. And what we're going to ask you to do in a few minutes is just share some of those and talk about some of the experiences that you've had.
I'd love to.
Let's talk first about you, though. You've lived in Pleasant Ridge how long?
Well, I was born in 1924, and my father had built a house back about 1920, 21, and he brought his bride there, and my brother was born in 23 in the house, and I was born in the next year.
So you're a born and bred Pleasant Ridger.
Pioneer.
And have you stayed here all through the years?
Up until a few years after my father died, which was probably he died in 1964. And we stayed a few more years and found the house was too big. And so I had a house back on Maplefield that I had rented. So my mother and my 2 children and I moved back there.
So you don't live in the original homestead, but you still live in Pleasant Ridge?
Yes, Okay,
right. And your original home was where?
My original home?
Yes, was on what street?
Oakland Park.
Oakland Park. And I think that's the house that's called, a lot of people refer to as the Mushroom House.
That's what I hear. I hadn't heard that.
Sort of, the roof that sort of rolls around.
Yes, and, it was after a English thatched roof.
It's meant to look like a thatched roof, but it's definitely a unique roof line.
Right.
Let's go to your first piece of writing here and see what you have to say.
Okay. We lived in a big house in a small neighborhood, mid-20s, early 30s, the Great Depression years. Dad lost most his fortune, but not our home. We loved it so.
Okay, and from the size of the home, your father must have been reasonably well off.
Yes, he was a very successful real estate developer in Ferndale and in Pleasant Ridge. He built a couple houses on Oakland Park.
And the name of his company was?
It was L.L. Watson. He was known as L.L. Watson. And in Ferndale, his offices were mostly up and down Woodward.
Now, was the Depression really hard on everybody?
Yes, that's when my dad lost most of his fortune. He lost most of his fortune in the crash of 29. But we kept the house. He managed to keep the house.
So they weren't selling many houses during the Depression?
No. He used to say that, I used to hear him say that, he says, many men jumped off the Belle Isle Bridge for losing less than he did. But he stayed there.
So he hung tough.
Yes, he did. They make him tough back in those days, I guess. You know.
Were there many houses on the street at that time?
I don't know, probably 6 or 8, maybe around in there.
Close to you?
Well, no, the Gerkes lived across the street from us, and the Sweeney house was there. And there were a couple others on the other side. But it went up about 2 or 3 fields before, on our side of the street, before there was a house.
Okay, let's take a look at your next piece here.
Oh, yes. This is the girl that, and I say then came Joy. She's the girl that lived in that house that looks like ours, only up on the other side of the street. Worthland, her mother was a city manager for many years, Mrs. Worthland. Or city clerk, I should say.
City clerk. Okay. Let's see what you
Then
have to say.
came Joy, the bad girl on our street. She stole my rabbit and painted it green. I saw it there in her garage.
She painted your rabbit green?
Yes.
Was it real?
I had a white rabbit, and she stole a can of paint from our garage, even. Then she came back, and she stole the carrots I had planted to feed the rabbit. I knew she did it, because she was always doing these kind of things.
What happened to the rabbit?
You know, it was in a box in her garage and had a splash of green paint across its back. I can still see that. We must have been 6 or 7 years old.
Did you ever get it back?
No. My mother was a younger woman, and the most women in the area there were more, 30, 40, and she didn't want to, and my dad was a little older.
Didn't want to cause
any trouble, so she always told us kids, don't cause any trouble. Don't go to anybody's yard unless you're invited. So.
And don't paint anybody's rabbit but your own.
Yeah.
Too bad the city clerk didn't tell her daughter that.
Oh, I don't think her mother knew. She was uphill.
Let's see what else you got here.
Oh. To skate at the pond in winter. It was behind our house down on the corner. We'd warm our feet in Mom's laundry tubs and sip hot cocoa when we got too cold. That was down on the corner behind us, down on Woodward, which would be a corner of Elm Park and Woodward Avenue.
Now, when you warmed yourself, was that down at the
We had a
skating
large basement in our house, and my mother turned this big back porch light on when it got to be 9 o'clock because we skated on school nights, you know, as younger kids.
That was the come home call.
Yeah, right. And then we had a large basement that had a stairs going down into the basement, outdoors. And there was about 6 or 8 rooms down the basement, and a big fireplace down there also. But there was 3 big laundry tubs, so all of us would sit around the edges and get quite a few kids.
Were there many children for you to play with?
Yeah, there were a lot. Mostly on our street were boys, and that's why I just died when I met Cherry, because I found a girlfriend, you know, besides Joy. I didn't play with her because
She painted rabbits. You don't want to play with girls like that. I can understand that.
No, I was shy, and she was a little aggressive.
Okay, what's next here?
To skate at the pond, oh, we did that one.
Yeah.
Our house was near a small woods where tramps would stay and cook their supper. We'd peek out the windows, Junior and I, and see the smoke curl above the trees.
Now, Junior was your brother?
Junior was my brother.
Now, why are tramps sleeping or staying in the woods near your house?
Well, that was in the early 30s, I suppose, right after the crash.
Was that toward Woodward? From your house?
That's where the city offices are now. That little bit of woods, well, it was just solid woods between Elm Park.
So these were homeless people.
Evidently.
No
You could see them sitting on a tree stump or something.
We think we have problems with the homeless today, but there were a lot more folks in the Depression, I guess.
Probably.
And that would have been by the police station then?
No, I'd be down on the... well, yeah. The woods ran from Oakland Park and the corner there all the way through to Elm Park.
Well, the police let them stay there?
Well, the police weren't there. I mean, you know, the little police booth was up at where the AAA is
But
now.
they knew people were staying in the woods.
I don't know. They weren't on the Woodward side, you see. They were up on the field side where we could look down.
We kind of hide out there.
My brother and I'd run upstairs and we'd crawl up into the front bedroom there on the side. Peek our heads up. We thought they could see us, you know.
Did you ever talk to any of them?
Oh, no. There was that fire hydrant there, and we could never ride our bikes past it, you see, because of the woods.
The end of the territory.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let's go on.
We loved the zoo and lived nearby. All the kids would go. We rode the elephant and sat on big turtles. A real fun time in the summertime.
Now, they let you ride the elephants at the zoo?
Yeah, they had those seats on the back. They call them hoodas. And then there was a big structure where you would walk up the steps. I think it was a nickel or something. And it had like a little bench on each side. And you get 3 or 4 people on it. Wow. And we'd sit on there, and the old elephant would lumber along, you know.
Oh, that would be fun.
And the turtles were just crawling around. There was no fence or moat, you know, around way back then. I mean, they had those huge ones, you know. You weren't supposed to ride the turtles. We'd run in and sit on one, you know. It was a great babysitter all through the summer.
I'll bet.
About what age would you have been at that time?
Oh, gosh, 7, 8 years old, 6, 7, 8, yeah. Maybe 7 or 8, I suppose we got there that early. There wasn't anything around then, you know. Things like didn't happen in those days.
Not a lot of heavy traffic.
No. There was nothing. I don't even think there was a street light at that corner of 10
So
miles.
the zoo had to be a big thing in this area.
It was a big deal. It was a big thing. All my friends from school would come down there and stay at our house, and then we'd all go over to the zoo. That was a stopping off point.
Made you a celebrity.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. We've got a couple of things we want you to read together here.
Okay. Grandpa lived with us for a while. We'd eat his ginger snaps that came in a brown bag from a little store up Washington Avenue way. One day the snaps were gone, and so was Grandpa's car. Mom had a big old Lincoln with a trunk on the back. We showed Gramps how to drive as we jumped up and down in the back seat, Junior and I, to get more snaps.
Okay, so you had to go to
Royal Oak
to get
those
ginger
little
snaps.
stores along, you know, those little tiny stores along the way.
Kind of what we call mom and pop market snaps?
That's right. They had a big barrel was ginger snaps. My grandfather loved ginger snaps.
And you just buy a bag, they scoop them out in
You
a
scoop
bag?
them out just like you do dog food up probably at the stores.
They didn't have any small stores near where you were to do any
Well,
shopping?
there was one down on the east side of Woodward on corner of Oak Ridge. It was a, what was that? An A&P. We knew the man that ran it. You go in your stand there at the counter, and he would go get each item as you said.
Tell him what you wanted, he'd go get it for you.
Then he'd take the paper bag and he'd write the amounts and put draw a line, and that was your total.
You know, I don't recall anybody at the supermarket asking me what I wanted anymore and going and getting it for
Well,
me.
you wouldn't eat so much, see.
That would keep things down.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, it's a good physical fitness program for the clerks. But,
yes. There was hardly anybody in the store.
Okay, now this new car you're talking about, what kind of, a Lincoln?
They were Lincolns. My dad had one and my mother had one. And,
nice.
Yeah, they were.
This was quite a fancy car at the time, wasn't it?
Oh my, yes, we were the Ritz back then.
Do you have any idea what you paid for the car?
I think my dad said it was $1,000 each, and of course that was big money back.
Major money. Then.
Early 20s, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the big running boards and those trunks on the back. We'd drive them up in the summer. We'd go up to Hubbard Lake near Alpena, and my mother would drive her Lincoln. The only thing when it got to be a little later and they got a little out of style, you know, those little sleeker models were coming in. We hate to be riding in the back seat because we come up to a stoplight and then the newer cars were down, you know, my brother and we felt so funny. We'd get down on the floor. We didn't want anybody to see us in that old car. Oh, it was funny.
Okay, let's go on and see what else we have.
Okay. Then came Walter Gerke, a friend of Joyce. They were pills together. The bad boy on our street. He took the milk bottles off our back porch in his red wagon. I was playing milkman, that's what he would say.
And the milkman was a common thing in the neighborhood at that time.
Well, there was a horse in the beginning, you know, way back. Then they got a truck. And of course, you have the glass bottles now, which are priceless, really. Everybody collects those things.
But everybody,
now.
they jingle up to your door. And,
yeah, they'd have that little wire rack.
Do you have a milk chute in your house?
No, the back door was reseated, and a set of steps went up, maybe about 6 or 8 steps. And then the other set went down into the basement, you see. So he'd set them up on the steps. It was all covered, you know.
Now, he'd set down whatever your order was and pick up the empty bottles? Is that what would happen?
Right. Uptown at the local 10-cent store, we'd buy a 5-cent song sheet and sit on the curb to memorize the words to the latest hits. Then I'd sing. One of our favorites was, "Come along and listen to the lullaby of Broadway." Did you remember that one?
Oh, I sure do.
Singing? Oh, I love that.
That's a good song.
Yes. We'd sit on the curb up there from the old Kresge's, up next to the Washington Theater where, well, the Baldwin is now.
So for a nickel, you buy the sheet
It
music.
was a big sheet of, like, typing paper. It was all these verses typed onto all the popular songs.
And you'd learn all the words?
Yeah. Oh, yes. That was a thing, to memorize all the words to the popular songs.
Well, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for reminiscing.
I appreciate it.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this issue of Inside Pleasant Ridge as much as we've enjoyed putting it together for you. People are laughing here, just having such a great time. Hope you tell your friends that this is the way to find out what's going on in their community. And tune in next month. We'll have an all-new show when we see you on Inside Pleasant Ridge.